So personally, on October the 7th, I remember saying out loud, like, there's clear right and wrong here, and no one's going to be able to twist this. And then I think on October 9th, I started seeing these posts from my high school friends in Canada, and I was in shock. One of them was blaming me basically for a genocide. We went to the same social studies class. We know the definition of genocide. We studied it together. As a medic, I treat Israelis and I treat Palestinians. I give medical care to Palestinians from Gaza during this war. If our government actually wanted to commit genocide, I don't think we would have given medical support to Palestinians. This is not a genocide, and you're blaming me for it while I've lost friends. My cousin's a hostage, my country's at war, and then blocking me because it doesn't fit your narrative anymore. My trauma doesn't fit her narrative, so she blocks it.
For the hostage families, the stab in the heart they felt on October 7th was soon followed by a stab in the back. Friends, neighbors, colleagues, people they thought should be on their side fighting for the hostages' freedom, turned on them, bullying them online, swallowing Hamas propaganda. My guest on the podcast today is one of the hostage family members who has felt that sense of betrayal since her cousin was abducted into Gaza. Omer was a tank commander on October 7th. Hamas terrorists abducted him into the Gaza Strip and he hasn't been heard from since. He grew up in Plainview, New York, didn't have to serve in the IDF, but did what he thought was right to serve his people, and now he is trapped in Gaza. Today I'm joined by his cousin, Yasmin Magal, who has been fighting for his freedom and speaks to me today about the betrayal that she has felt from high school friends in Canada, unable to show even a little bit of sympathy. We talk about the recurring dreams she has been experiencing in this one long protracted nightmare, and about the need to bring all the hostages home, including the men, including the soldiers. Because as important as it is to bring out the children first and the women and the elderly, we mustn't forget the men. They were strong on October 7th, they're not, after over 10 months of abuse in the Hamas terror dungeons. And we speak about the need to get a deal that will get the hostages out, but will leave Israel with the leverage to get all the hostages out, instead of condemning hostages like her cousin Omer in the hands of their Hamas rapist captors in the terror dungeons. Welcome to State of a Nation.
Breaking news out of Israel this morning.
Shocking hostage taking.
Hundreds of Israelis are dead.
I want to bring in Israeli government spokesman.
Eylon. What happens when the 4-day pause?
How do you resolve this?
Where does this go?
Yasmin Magal, welcome to State of a Nation.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Take me back to October 7th and the moment that you discover that your cousin, Omer, a tank commander in the IDF, was abducted by Hamas terrorists into the Gaza Strip.
I didn't find out on October 7th. I found out a few days later. On October 7th, for me, I was traveling with my girlfriends from school. We went to Sinai in Egypt. We arrived on October 6th in the afternoon. And then on October the 7th in the morning, my boyfriend called me. We live in Jerusalem. And he said that he was waken up by a siren, and he made friends with the neighbors in the community shelter, and not to worry too much. But then I started looking at the news, and I mean, I'm familiar with a siren here and there. I used to live by the Gaza border. Both of us used to live there on a kibbutz. But it was a little different this time. And at first I called my dad and I asked him, should I go back to Israel? And he said, I don't know yet. We'll see. Like, let's wait and see what's going on. But then one of my other girlfriend's boyfriend called her and said, you must come back now. So we started heading back to Eilat. But I only found out about Omer a few days after. I knew that no one was in touch with him, but I was hoping that he's fighting and that he just doesn't have his phone on him. So I was hoping for the best case scenario. And then a few days later, I found out that he was actually taken pretty early morning on October the 7th.
Your whole life has been upended. You, the whole family who've been fighting to bring Omer home. Tell me a little bit about Omer, because for me, he's a real Gen Zionist hero. He made Aliyah from Plainview, New York, didn't have to, enlisted in the Israeli army, in combat, as a tank commander, and is a real role model, I think, for young Jews around the world, or at least should be. So tell me about him.
He's, honestly, I don't think anyone has anything bad to say about Omer. Everyone loves him. So like you said, he was born and he grew up in the United States, and he went for a gap year after high school. But throughout his entire childhood, he was friends with everyone. I mean, he made friends all over the United States, and everyone thinks they're his best friend. He's a leader. He was the captain of, I think, almost every sports team in his high school. He was a leader in his youth group, USY. He decided to take a gap year. He went to Israel, and
right. What drove that decision? Because it's so not obvious to leave the comfort of New Jersey for military service in Israel. Why did he do that? Right.
So he didn't initially come to serve in the military. He came for a gap year after high school, and the plan was to go back to university after he was accepted to university back home, and he only came for a year initially to learn, experience, connect, because a lot of Jewish youngsters come for a gap year, just 1 year of yeshiva, seminar, but he did mechina, which is a preparatory program for the army, and he did it with Israelis. And he fell in love with Israel. I mean, his extended family lives here, us, and he loves the people. He made so many good friends, and he loves cats so much. So I think that also has a little bit to do with why he loves Israel so much, because cats are everywhere. And he's obsessed with cats. And after that year, it wasn't an obvious choice. Like you said, it was not, because he was accepted to university and his friends went to university. And he had a comfortable life back at home in New York. But he decided that now it's his turn to give back. And I mean, our grandfather is a Holocaust survivor. Nothing is obvious. Nothing, we don't take things for granted here. So
is that something that you think affected Omer's thinking about coming to do a gap year in Israel and serving in the army? How has having a Holocaust survivor in the family affected your view of the world and understanding of your Jewish identity? I mean, his Jewish identity as a diaspora Jew.
I think it helps us to not take things for granted. We don't take Israel for granted, and I think he doesn't take his comfortable life back in the States also for granted. I mean, his grandfather did not grow up the same way. So I think that also helped. And I think he felt that now was his turn to give whatever he can. And he wanted to volunteer and do the hardest thing and be, I mean, he went into the tank unit. It's not, a lot of people don't want to go there. It's hard. It's not easy. And he's a team member and he's a leader. So he wanted to kind of be with the guys, you know? So in the tank unit, you are with the guys. It's not, you're not by yourself. You have your team, and he really loves the concept of having a team.
Let's talk about this struggle to free Omer from Hamas captivity. You're a medical student, right?
I am.
Have you been able to get any studying done since October 7th?
I wouldn't call that studying. I've been able to pass my exams, but I don't feel like I learned anything. I mean, the reason I'm in med school is I want to help people. I want to save lives in the future. I also volunteer as a medic in Magen David Adom. This is what I do. This is my personality. And all I've been doing is trying to save Omer's life. This is what I've been doing now. And it's a life that I'm trying to save. I can't really sit in class and learn how to save lives when I'm too busy trying to save his life right now.
Because this is a problem that's common to, I imagine, all the hostages' families. This has become their main preoccupation. And I imagine it's impossible to hold down a job, to study properly, to do anything to do with ordinary life. And we're already hearing some shocking stories about hostage family members falling into debt because they can't hold down a job. I mean, this is how many members of the family are now treating freeing Omer as their full-time job?
I think most of us are. I think it's a matter of priorities. If I used to think of school as my main priority and I would give up a lot of other things, events. I didn't go to social events and I gave up a lot of things in order to study. Now, most of my time goes to trying to free Omer and bring him back. So that's the main priority, and everything else kind of fades into the background.
And you've been doing that primarily by traveling around Canada to speak on campuses and around the world. Tell me, what have the last 10 months been like for you? What activism have you been pursuing? Where has this struggle taken you?
I mean, I've been doing it here in Israel. I've been going to the Knesset almost every week. A lot of meetings with ministers, a lot of interviews. I started editing videos, which is something that I don't enjoy and I don't think I'll ever do again. And I'm ready to just throw my phone out the window once this all ends. And yes, I did go to Canada. I met with officials. I'm Canadian myself. So I met with officials. I met with communities, a lot of interviews, press, media, whatever we can do. I mean, we're trying to keep this as a main topic, as a hot topic for the entire world community and not just for us. I mean, for me, that's all I think about when I wake up, when I go to bed, every waking moment, and also in my dreams. But I am aware that, I mean, people that consume information from TikTok tend to get distracted really fast. And this happened 10 months ago. And we don't have another story to tell. It's still the same story that we're telling. And I feel like we're trying to just reinvent it every day to make it interesting. And sadly, not everyone finds it interesting. You said that this is still with you in your dreams. Yes. Do you have recurring nightmares about Omar? My dreams are, in most of my dreams, he's returning, honestly. So I'm trying to keep being hopeful also when I'm awake, because I'm trying to send him good energy. If I can't be hopeful and if I can't be positive, I can't even imagine what it's like for him. As much as it's hard for us, it is so much worse for him. So if I can't be hopeful, I can't even think about how hard it is for him. I'm sending him positive energies only. What do you remember from these dreams when you wake up? I mean, it's hard to wake up into the reality because in my dreams, he's returning. And then I wake up and he's still there. And I remember the feeling of him returning. I remember what it's like to see hostages returning, people that I don't know and that I've only seen through posters and through their families that I've met. And when I see them, I remember that it's possible. And like the feeling that I have when I see them, it's going to be so much better when I see him. And that feeling is shared, I think, not only by hostages' families, but by Jews around the world who were moved to tears when hostages got out through the deal, through a rescue. I remember when Noah Argamani and the other 3 hostages were rescued, I was in Paris. I got the news, I just stopped in the street and started crying. And I think there wasn't a dry eye in the whole Jewish world. And I'm wondering, from your travels in the diaspora, what's your impression about this moment within the Jewish diaspora and how the hostage issue has energized and mobilized them and given them a sense of common purpose? What are you seeing there? Definitely a common purpose. I see unity that I haven't seen before. So I went to Canada, like I said before. And I mean, Toronto has a big Jewish community. We all know that. And they have a strong community. And they every Sunday they hold a rally to free the hostages. And it's been months. I don't know about any other event where Jews have been doing this for months, something like that. And it's not easy. The weather in Canada is not friendly always. And
neither are the people.
Right. I mean, the people are friendly up front, but
well, not all in Canada. There's been an ugly face that has come to light.
There has been an ugly face, and I'll tell you about it more in a second. But I traveled also to Calgary and Vancouver. Mm-hmm. And I actually used to live in Calgary. I graduated from high school there, so I am familiar with the community. And when I lived there, there wasn't much of a community, of a Jewish community. There are not a lot of Jews in Calgary. It's a small community. And I only knew that I was going the day that I was going, or like the day before, because it was all last minute. So they prepared an event for me to speak to the community the day of or the day before. And people showed up. And that's not something that Canadians like to prepare, and they like to know in advance. And it still happened, and they still made it happen, and people showed up.
They're becoming more Israeli and spontaneous.
I guess, a little bit. And that's the hostage issue that brought them together like that.
You alluded just now to some of the ugly reactions that you've received. Within the Jewish world, we've seen this great awakening, a sense of mobilization, a determination to bring the hostages home. But we also said earlier there are some people who are losing interest, who want to forget, who want to make others forget about the hostages. Tell me what sort of ugly backlash you have witnessed and personally experienced.
Right. Some of it is not personal, like you said, people ripping out posters. It's posters to them. I don't take it personally to me, but when I went to Canada, they saw me wearing this shirt and trying to be interviewed after a rally, and there was a counter protest, and they started following me with loud music, so I wouldn't be able to be interviewed. And then they started ripping out posters in front of me because they saw me. So that's a little more personal, because there's a person standing in front of you and you still do that. Then it's not as, I wouldn't say it's as easy. I mean, I guess it's easier to rip out posters because they don't see it as a person, but they also do that in front of people. Sorry, so it is personal.
Just help me understand. You are at a rally to free the hostages.
Yes.
This is a humanitarian cause. And there are counter-protesters playing loud music to try to drown you out. And not only ripping down hostage posters, but deliberately and provocatively doing it in front of you?
Yes, correct.
This must feel like a stab in the heart.
Yes. It made me really sad. I don't know these people. So the real stab in the heart was from my friends from high school. Because I went to public school in Canada, I have a lot of Canadian friends. And I mean, Canada has people from all around the world. So people from all around the world. And a lot of them since October the 7th have bullied me on Instagram, and some blocked me.
Your friends?
Friends. People that were my friends. I don't call them friends anymore, obviously. But we were high school friends. We were. Sorry,
what do you mean they've been bullying you online?
I mean, a lot of them have been posting fake propaganda. And at first I wanted to talk to them about it, obviously, and share my own experience. They felt like they could teach me about it, and that I only speak my government's propaganda. They say Israeli propaganda. They say that we're committing genocide, and, for example, freeing 4 hostages is not it doesn't justify killing how many Palestinians were killed. And even when some kidnapping videos were published, and I posted it on my story, they replied with, yes, it is horrible, but it doesn't justify, and then insert anything in there.
But I mean, is this, I'm trying to understand, they're having an argument with you about the war that is simply insensitive because of your personal involvement, or have there been personal attacks on you, dragging Omer into this?
Yes, of course. I mean, I can tell you that one of them, for example, was blaming me basically for a genocide. My cousin is a hostage. You're blaming me for a genocide. That is not happening. And we went to the same social studies class. We know the definition of genocide. We studied it together. This is not a genocide, and you're blaming me for it while I've lost friends. My cousin is a hostage. My country is at war. And then blocking me because it doesn't fit your narrative anymore. My trauma doesn't fit her narrative, so she blocks it. There was this one person from school, and they actually posted recently a story that felt like a personal attack on me. They shared some fake news. I don't remember exactly what it was, and then they posted, you can't say that this is about the hostages anymore. Your family member would be ashamed of you if they know that this is what you do to get them out of there.
Wow.
And I'm sure that they don't have many hostages' families on their following. So this was a personal attack to me.
This backlash, I imagine, came as a surprise or a shock to you. When Omar was abducted, did you try to mobilize your high school friends in Canada and bring them on side for the Bring Them Home Now movement to try to get them to advocate for the hostages' freedom?
So personally, on October the 7th and 8th, I remember saying out loud, like, now the world will not be able to confuse it. Like, now it's going to be clear to everyone. No one's going to be able to twist this. There's clear right and wrong here, and no one's going to be able to get confused. And then I think on October 9th, I started seeing these posts from my high school friends, and I was in shock. And it felt like a stab in the back. And yes, I have been trying to get them on my side, these people, because, I mean, I know them. They're good people. I was friends with them. Like,
how do you explain
they know
that,
me.
then? How do you explain that then? Because these are good, normative, decent people who are acting in the ugliest way imaginable. Forget that it's in the service of a genocidal terrorist organization, but it's just a basic lack of human decency. How are you understanding that ugliness?
It's hard to understand. For me, it feels like a stab in the back because, like I said, I thought everyone's going to be behind us on this. Like, how can you not be? They're hostages. How can you support this? This is like, this makes you a bad person if you support hostage taking. If you don't think that hostages should be brought home and should be released, then you're not a good person, I think. I mean, and these people, but it is a dilemma because these people, I know them, they're not actually bad people. They actually think that they're fighting for what's right. What happened to them is that Hamas propaganda is really, really good. It's really good. And it did not start on October 7th. They've been working on it for years. And it's not just them. There's a lot of propaganda, and a lot of these people get their information from TikTok and from social media. And when I scroll on TikTok, I get a lot of pro-Palestinian content, then you can just, and it's supposed to be my For You page, right? So you can just imagine how someone who doesn't have a cousin who's a hostage, how much content of that type of content they get.
I mean, they've simply been hoodwinked by these horrific lies that, as you say, have been shared before October 7th, and you know, you have enough of a struggle now fighting to free Omer that you don't need to be a solution for other people's problems. But there will be people who are watching this and saying, I've also lost friends over arguments about the war. I'm afraid to lose friends if I open up this argument. I've experienced bullying. My kids have experienced cyberbullying. What do I do? And so I'm wondering, after 10 months of this experience, whether you have any insights to share with people about how to cope, engage with, fight back against this just utter lack of empathy from people you thought were your friends.
Right. And from the world community as a whole. I think that I understand why people are afraid to speak up. I understand. I mean, if they allow themselves to target a family member of a hostage, then someone who's not related, then I'm sure people have been bullied much worse than that. And I understand why it's scary. But if we don't speak, then other people will not hear this narrative.
And it's not just you who's been speaking out. Really, the face of the campaign to free Omer have been his amazing parents,
right,
Ronen and Ona, and they have been real heroes fighting his cause. They've gone everywhere. Recently at the Republican National Convention, in fact, we have a video clip just now of the astonishing moment they took the stage and the crowd is chanting, bring them home, and let's watch this.
Our son, Omer, is an American citizen. For 285 long days and nights, Hamas terrorists have been holding Omer imprisoned in tunnels underneath Gaza.
There are 8 American hostages, 5 presumed to be alive. Now, I'm not suggesting that the families of those hostages, who will do anything to get them out, are asking for any sort of special or preferential treatment because they are Americans. But they have been using the fact that they are Americans to try to lobby for access and pressure, and use that as another argument to try to get them out. So tell me about that. How is the fact that Omer is a US citizen, how is that relevant to the struggle for his freedom?
Well, at first, everyone that heard that he's American kind of was relieved. People were like, phew, okay, so they can't keep him there for that long. He's American, the first few weeks.
Really?
And then now it's been over 10 months. And still, when I say he's American, people are like, okay, that's good, right? And I'm like, I guess, hopefully. I don't know. I mean, I believe that it was going to be a much stronger card, and I hope that it will be. And I can't see a world where the states will let their citizens stay there. I don't want. I mean, it's scary to think of that. They're such a strong country, and hopefully it will help Omer and the rest of the hostages. I mean, the states are involved in the negotiations, and I mean, all I can do is hope for that to help. I mean, I thought it was going to be. I didn't think it was going to stretch for that long, so I don't know what to say now.
I say this with a lot of sadness, that it's a humiliation for the United States that there are still American hostages and they have not been able to force this jihadi terrorist army to free those American hostages. And the last time I saw Ronen and Ona was actually in Central Park in New York during a rally marking 9 months, and Omer was the face of that rally. And I told the crowd, you need to tell your government to start acting like a superpower and use all the pressure that it can, the financial, diplomatic pressure on Hamas's allies, which is not happening, to try to get them home. Now the family have been pushing for a deal to get the hostages out, and they've been critical of the Prime Minister. Now, as much as we can hope that as an American citizen, that will generate more American pressure to let him out, I think everyone realizes that in any deal, the men are coming out last, and the male soldiers are coming out last. How does that understanding affect how you have been pushing for a deal now, knowing that Omar would probably be the last one out?
To get to the last one, you have to start with the first one. And if we don't start getting them out, then we're never going to reach the point where it's Omar's turn. I understand why we need to get the girls out. I understand. And
the children, there are still 2 children.
Right.
Hamas claims are dead, but we don't know that.
Right, we don't know.
And for all we know, Kfir and Ariel Bibas are alive.
Right. We need to get them out first. I understand. We must not forget the men, and we must not leave them behind. It's hard for people to kind of imagine. I think in our society, men are strong, young men. Omar is 22. He's tall. From photos, it's hard to imagine him so powerless, but they don't have any power over there, and they can be tortured as much. Men can get raped. They can't get pregnant physically, but they can get raped too. And we can't ignore that fact. We can't think of, they're men. They can stay there for much longer. They can survive longer. No, it's been over 10 months. He was strong when he was taken, but I don't know what he's been eating for the past 10 months, what he's been drinking, if he got any sunlight, got to see any sunlight, what air he's breathing. They're not strong, they're weak. And we can't forget that. We can't just think of them as the men that we remember, strong and full of life. They're weak, and we need to get them out as well.
That's such an important point. You say, we don't know whether he sees sunlight, we don't know what he's eaten. Well, actually, what we do know from the hostages who have got out is no, they didn't see sunlight at all. Yes, they were severely malnourished, total deprivation of protein for all the time that they were in there, severe abuse. And I'm wondering, how does it make you feel when people talk about women and children, as if the lives of men are worth less?
How does it make you feel as a man?
Look, I also understand the need that the first ones we have to get out are the Bibas kids, okay? Because they're children. Then you have to get out the women because of the heightened fear of sexual abuse. And Amit Susanna, who was freed in the first hostage deal in November, has spoken about how she was sexually assaulted at gunpoint. And we have other horrific testimony from women about what has been going on in the Hamas terror dungeons, what they saw, the way that they're dressing the hostages up as dolls, I think Aviva Siegel said. But they also say the same is happening to the men. And we know that hostages have been executed, tortured, abused in the most horrific way. And that's why, it's a difficult question to talk about, do we want a deal or not a deal? Yes, we all want to get the hostages out. And we don't have to get into an argument about the dynamics of the negotiations, but there is an argument that says, look, if you go for a deal immediately, you might get the first batch of hostages out, but you leave Hamas in a much stronger position to hold on to the men as an insurance policy. Or actually, if you continue putting military pressure on Hamas and say, we need to create the conditions for a better deal, then actually you're more likely to get the men out eventually, not by going for a deal immediately, but by continuing to put pressure on Hamas. I'm wondering, what do you think about that line of argument, that actually you need more pressure on Hamas Because that makes it more likely that we will get a deal that will get Omer out.
So first of all, I want to say that I wish we didn't have to make a deal with the devil. I wish we could rescue all of them by military operations. Sadly, the IDF has rescued 7 hostages, and through a deal we got back more than 100. So the numbers are speaking for themselves. We need to make a deal. I understand what you're saying and where you're coming from. When we do sign a deal, it's not me on the negotiation table, but I think that the deal that will be signed has to make sure that there is still leverage to get the rest of the hostages out once the phase of the children, women, and elderlies ends. Because if they end up giving Hamas everything they want for only a few of the hostages, then just like you said, we're sentencing the rest of the hostages to stay there for a really long time.
That's such a critical point, because people say, go for a deal, go for a deal, go for a deal. Okay, but it's not as if Hamas wants to release the hostages. Hamas's interest is to try to hold on to as many hostages as possible, specifically the men, specifically Omar, as insurance in the long run. And whatever deal Israel signs to get the children, to get the women, to get the elderly out as a first stage, has to make sure that Israel has the leverage to get the rest out, instead of what Hamas is demanding as we record this episode, which is essentially an Israeli capitulation that would condemn the rest of the hostages to languishing in Gaza, like there have been others from before 2014 who have been stuck there.
Right.
I want to ask you, the family recently made the difficult decision to release previously unseen footage of the moment of Omer's abduction, when Hamas terrorists seized control of his tank and dragged him into Gaza. And you haven't watched that footage.
Right.
Why?
We had this video since 10 months ago, and I decided not to watch it 10 months ago. I've been told what's in the video. I know what's going on there, but I didn't want to see it. I am doing the best I can, and I'm fighting as hard as I can, and seeing this might damage that. It might, it will be so hard to see for me, and I don't know how I'll react. And it's important for people to see, because people forget, but I don't forget. I don't need a reminder. I imagine the video. I don't need to see it. I know what's in it, and I see it in my head. I don't need to see it, really see it, to have it play in my head over and over again. It's been playing in my head over and over again for the past 10 months without seeing it ever. So I don't feel the need to see it right now, because I need to stay strong and to keep fighting. I can't have anything really. If it doesn't help me fight for him, then I'm gonna save it for later.
And it's so important to look after your mental health, and we need you. Omer needs you to remain strong and able to fight. But why did the family decide to sit on this footage for 10 months and only release it now?
People need reminders now. Sadly, like I said before, it's still the same story. And for us, it's the main priority, and it's the only thing that matters, and it's the only thing that's interesting. But for other people...
I don't mean why release it.
So
why didn't they release it months ago?
Months ago, it was still a main topic. You don't have to release the footage. It's hard footage to watch. It is hard. I wish we didn't have to. I wish Omer... I mean, I wish we had him back already. I wish we didn't make it to the point where we had to release more disturbing footage to make people feel this way again and remember what they experienced there, and to have this punch in the stomach again. People, it's hard. I wish we didn't have to.
Because we hear so often from people who want to help the fight for the hostages saying, release more atrocity pictures, release more footage from the abduction. Why would the families hold on to this footage? And you're saying they are paying a personal and emotional price. By releasing this footage, they don't want to. And in some place, there's a hope that they won't have to.
Right.
Until they give up.
It's hard to see your family member in this position. And then, I mean, I wish Omer could decide if he wants to release the footage or not for himself. I wish he came. I mean, if he was here and he could decide for himself, then like whatever he decides, right? It's him in the video. It's not me. It's not his parents. It's him. But he's not here, and we have to speak for him, and we have to make these decisions for him, and his parents make these decisions for him. But I wish we didn't have to.
During the struggle to free Omar, you must have had a crazy roller coaster of ups and downs and moments of despair, moments where perhaps you begin to lose hope. Do you believe that we will get Omar back?
Yes. It's a belief. I can't explain it, right? You can't explain your beliefs. It's not, there are no facts behind beliefs. But yes, I believe that we will get him back. And this is the footage that I play in my mind. When I get a choice, this is what I play, and this is what I dream about. I've seen it happen to other families, so I can just kind of insert my family in there and like see him get off the chopper or the ambulance, and like, you know, every time he sees me, he says, "Hey, cuz." So I hear him, "Hey, cuz," again, and
we all want to get
right
to that point where Omar steps off an IDF chopper and says, "Hey, cuz." Yasmin, for people around the world who want to help the fight for the hostages, who are wearing the dog tags, wearing the yellow pins, going to the weekly rallies, putting up the hostage posters, crying and screaming and wanting to know, what else can I do? What else can they do?
I think that it's sad that it has to get to that point, but the leaders of the world, they need to understand that their voters want the hostages home, because they just want to get reelected, a lot of them. And to get reelected, you need to do what your voters want you to do. So if they understand that that's what their voters want, then all of a sudden that's what they'll want. I mean, the other side is making a lot of noise, and a lot of governments have been making steps to get their votes. They need to understand that the silent majority does want the hostages home and does understand that. And for that to happen, these people that do speak up need to keep speaking up, and more people need to speak up and send letters to officials and just make it very, very clear that there is right and wrong here. And I think a lot of people that are afraid to speak will be less afraid once they hear a lot of other people say it out loud. It's more scary to be alone in it. So once a lot of people speak, you're not alone in it, more people will join us. I mean, we are right here. Don't let people get confused. I'm sure that people, when they don't hear a lot of people speak and when they hear mostly one narrative, they start to question themselves, and they're like, wait, maybe
gaslighting.
Right, maybe hostage taking is justified. Like, it's not. It's not justified. It's wrong. you're not wrong. Like, you're not wrong. Hostage taking is bad. I mean, human trafficking is bad, right? No one is questioning that. No one's questioning that kidnapping children in the United States is bad, right? Why is kidnapping kids here in Israel a debate? It shouldn't be a debate, right? It's just bad.
We're fighting for a humanitarian cause. There are leaders who know that this is a humanitarian cause, but they're running scared. They need moral support. And that means we need people to speak up and make sure that their elected officials know that they will be rewarded if they fight for the hostages' freedom, and if they try to make this issue go away in a way that condemns Omer and other hostages in the Hamas terror dungeons, there will be a cost.
Right. I think that seeing the footage coming out of Gaza, I understand why people are like, this is bad. It's bad. I mean, Israel is doing horrific things. They're using this as propaganda, right? They're using human shields. They're using their own civilians as human shields, and they're using this as propaganda, and it's good for them, and then the world is giving them what they want. What I've been telling in my interviews abroad is that as a medic, I treat Israelis and I treat Palestinians. I treated Palestinians, I gave medical care to Palestinians from Gaza during this war. And if our government actually wanted to commit genocide, I don't think that we would have given medical support to Palestinians. I mean, I gave them medical help because they're human beings without knowing if Omer has seen any medical help or any medical personnel since 10 months ago. And I think that, I mean, this is my case. Even though these are my circumstances, I still choose to treat people as people. And I just hope that the rest of the world can see that too, and see that, like you said, this is a humanitarian issue. It's not political. It's not Middle Eastern. It is a world issue, humanitarian issue. And if it happened to my family, Omer is an American citizen, I am a Canadian citizen. If it happened to us, it can happen to anyone. And we need to unite behind this cause.
Yasmin, Magal, please God, by the time we get this episode online, Omer will already be a free citizen, safe and healthy,
Amen.
Back in the embrace of his family.
Thank
Yasmin,
you.
Magal, thank you for coming on State of a Nation.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And that brings us to the end of today's episode of State of a Nation. As always, if you are, I won't say enjoying, finding value in these podcasts, then please follow and subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever else you get your podcasts. Give us a like, share an episode of the podcast, but far more importantly, go and fight for the hostages' freedom. Wear that dog tag, stick up the hostage posters, write to your elected officials, go to that rally. Do not let your leaders forget. Do not let your neighbors forget. Do not let the world forget that there are still 115 hostages who are being starved and tortured and raped and executed in the Hamas terror dungeons, and they must all come home. I'm Eylon Levy, and thanks for watching.